give people a little bit more of a chance for people to come to the webinar, but we'll be starting shortly. I'm just going to ask everyone to be on mute, as that way there won't be any feedback noise. You will be getting a copy of this presentation after this webinar, so don't worry about that. And you will have a chance to ask some questions at the end of the webinar. So I do ask you to hold on to your questions until at that point. And then once we do have that question and answer period, you'll be able to ask your questions in the chat box. Myself or one of my coworkers will be able to read the questions, okay?
We are live now in the YouTube. I will share the link.
Yes, so one of our coworkers, this will be recorded on YouTube through World Skills. You'll be able to access the presentation afterwards as well. There will also be a recording through SOPA with Arrive Prepared. I'll get into a little bit about that once we start the presentation. I'm just gonna have one more minute and then anyone else who can come in later will be able to still enjoy the rest of the presentation. So just one more minute, guys. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so for those who just joined, we will be starting just about right now. Some people may be joining us later, that's okay. I do ask everyone to be on mute as to lessen any kind of feedback noise. You will be getting a copy of this presentation after we are done with the webinar, and there will be a recording available on World Skills YouTube as well as through SOPA Arrive Prepared. You will have the chance to ask questions at the end of the presentation, so don't worry about that. Wait till the end because some of your questions may be answered throughout the presentation, and then if they're not, we'll have the chance later on. So let's get started. A guide to interviews. So this was in Ontario, but it also is for all of Canada. So I'm Kristy-Lu Desrosiers. I'm your facilitator for today. I work with SOPA, Settlement Online Pre-Arrival. Some of you may already be clients with us, some of you may not be. You can go ahead and check out our website, prepare.ca. We have different kinds of courses, jobs and strategies, soft skills. We have self-guided courses. We have employment counselors. There's quite a lot of services that we provide. So if you're not with us already, please check out our website and see if you're eligible to start services with us. So first, Canadian interviews. We're going to go over their standard rules, parts, strategies, etc. An interview in Canada is very important for both employers and candidates. An employer will get to see your presentation skills, technical knowledge, hard and soft skills, as well as a more in-depth look into your experiences. And then you as a candidate can see if this job matches your own qualifications and matches your interests, and see if the organization would be a good fit for you. So remember, you're being interviewed, but you can also see it as you're interviewing the company. So first, we'll go over hard and soft skills. In Canada, all jobs will look at your hard skills and your soft skills. Hard skills are those that are typically taught and are easier to measure. Soft skills are individual skills that typically aren't as easy to measure. Employers, though, do value both, and thus both need to be highlighted in interviews. We have a very nice little infographic down here. So we have teachable abilities or skills that are easy to quantify for hard skills. There's proficiency in a foreign language, for example, a degree or certificate, typing speed, etc. And then here for soft skills, which are also known as people skills or interpersonal skills, you have communication, flexibility, leadership, teamwork, etc. So before you do an interview, remember you need to be prepared to dress for it. First impressions are important, and you need to show a professional appearance. Always research the norms of your field and what the average dress code is. You typically want to dress a little bit above that just to be safe. Wear comfortable, though professional shoes in case of tours or other tasks. Now, we will be going over stuff of what interviews are like typically before COVID, and there will be some slides talking about how to deal with interviews in the new reality COVID-19 is doing as well. So do not worry about that. Business casual. So business casual is typically the minimum dress code throughout established or older conservative businesses. So men, you'll often want to wear a blazer or a sweater, Oxford or polo shirt, something with a collar, some dress pants, professional shoes. For women, you can wear professional trousers and a blazer as well. You can also have a fitted blouse or button-down shirt. A knee-length skirt or knee-length dress is also fine. Flats, slingbacks, or boots. And for both, simple watches or simple jewelry. So where can this be found? Typically at entry-level employees at traditional dress companies, department managers, employer sponsored events, etc. So business formal. Business formal dress is the pinnacle of corporate attire and often distinguishes those in executive positions. So this is where you kind of bring that casual dress, business casual, bring it up a higher level. So maybe, for example, for men, you can have a fitted solid color pinstripe suit, solid color collared button down with cut sleeve, solid colored or simple pattern necktie, leather shoes, etc. For women, you can also again have a solid colored suit, solid color collared button down shirt, etc. You can also have a solid color or simple pattern blouse or button down, stockings, low or high heels, and again, simple watches, simple jewelry. So before you think about all of that and before you start preparing, you need to think about what to say when you get a call. It's always exciting to get a call for an interview. Sometimes it's so exciting you forget to do anything but accept. However, it's okay to ask questions, and it is honestly often expected. The more information you know, the better. Asking about location, parking, and busing, for example, are always good questions. Knowing how long the interview will be is always useful. It's also helpful to find out if there is some form of practical element. For example, will they test your typing? Will they do a mock appointment with you? That kind of a thing. Ask if the names and job titles of the interviewers are available. Knowing the panelist's name beforehand is useful so that you can memorize them prior to the interview. Do not ask about salary, benefits, job descriptions, or other similar information, as that's kind of more of a conversation you'd have later on in the interview process. A reminder, make sure you set up your voicemail with a professional message, as you will not always be there to answer the phone, and you want them to be able to leave a message when needed. However, do remember that sometimes when people are scheduling the interviews, they don't always have a lot of time. Make sure you ask the two most important questions that you want to get an answer for first, as that way, if they don't have enough time to answer all the other ones, you'll still have those ones answered. As well, they may say they're going to send up an email to follow up and share the details. And that way you can always follow up with questions there, although again, do not ask too many. So some example questions that you can ask: where specifically are you located? Is there parking available? Is the company on a bus route? How long will the interview be? What is the interview format? Will there be a practical component? Specific preparation needed for the practical component? Could you tell me the names and job titles of the interviewers? So make sure to pick the most important ones to you, as that's the ones you will ask first. And then if you have the chance to ask some of the others, you can do so. So next is interview formats. A panel interview is where several or more people interviewing you at once. Sorry, can everyone just put themselves on mute? Hello, can everyone, just a reminder to please put yourself on mute. Thank you. So a panel interview can be intimidating. Sorry, someone didn't put themselves on mute. Can you please check and put yourself on mute? Thank you. So a panel interviewer can be intimidating, but it is becoming increasingly common. If you have a panel interview happening, just make sure, and if it is in person, make sure you pay equal attention to everyone in the room and maintain eye contact with people as you can. Distance interview, which is something that's especially relevant right now, where you're using technology to have an interview in different locations via video conferencing and phones. So this is one that's going to be very common and useful right now that with what's happening. Do remember that you can have a panel interview through distance technology as well. This is fine. In that case, the person talking to you is really usually going to be the only one who is showing up, or at least showing up the biggest. So just pay attention there as you can and do what you can. So a group interview is where you interview multiple candidates at a time. This isn't as common depending on the field. A lunch interview is more of an informal meeting in a restaurant. It can also be known as a meet and greet. Job fair, where you can have brief interview periods where the employer asks you a couple of questions. You have the chance to ask them a couple of questions. At a job fair, you will want your resume, maybe a cover letter, and you will want some kind of 30-second summary of yourself. And then social media. Some places are starting to use social media to interview or screen applicants. Expectations. Before going to an interview, it is good to know what to expect or not to expect. During a Canadian interview, generally you will do most of the talking, need to discuss your skills and accomplishments with confidence, be prepared to describe your interpersonal skills, strengths, skills you plan to improve, leadership style, and problem-solving abilities. You will have to demonstrate what you know about the company or organization you're interviewing with. You will generally not experience personal questions such as those about marital status, family status, religion, and health, which are typically not allowed as you cannot use them to make your hiring decisions. As well, questions about childhood, high school, or other personal situations, histories, are typically not focused on or asked for. So the exception, sometimes there are employers who ask these questions that are really not appropriate, as you're not allowed to make your hiring decisions based on these questions. So those questions are places of origin, family status, race, sex, color, marital status, religion, ethnic origin, age, sexual orientation, citizenship, record of offenses, and disabilities. These are all questions that is illegal in Canada to make hiring decisions based off. So employers should not be talking about this. However, if you do get asked that question in an interview and you're a little unsure about how to ask that, you can just say something like, "I'm sorry, but how is that relevant to this job?" and kind of see what they say. You can also always just be like, that's not an appropriate question to ask. That's totally fair to do so. So, other difficult questions. An interview asks about your salary expectations. What do you say? This is when you can use labor market research, which some of you may have seen in our first webinar, to help you suggest a fair salary. If you do not have that research prepared to kind of help you guide on that negotiation, you can always say something like, my major motivation is not salary, but I would hope to receive the salary paid to other staff in the same position. You can also say something like, I thought I should be prepared. If you have done your research, you can say something like, I thought I should be prepared for this question. So I researched salary expectations for legal assistance using the, for example, Working Canada website. And I found the salary ranges between blank amount of money and blank amount of money. So I'd hope to be paid within this range. And again, if you're still unsure, you can say something like, my salary is flexible depending on the full benefits package. However, I would still want to be in line with market rate. So basically, you kind of want to show that you're thinking about it, you want to be paid fairly, but you're also still open to negotiation. And that way, until you can do a little bit of your own research to help back that up, you can kind of prolong that question. Another difficult question is if an interviewer says or asks about how you look overqualified for the position. So employers might think that if you're overqualified, you may be bored and will leave the job quickly. You need to convince the interviewer that you really want the job and assure them that you plan to stay even though you are overqualified. You might say something like, although this position is more junior than the ones I've had previously, I'm very excited about the possibility of working for this company. I feel confident I can handle the challenges of this job as I learn more about how my occupation is practiced here in Canada. I know that there are opportunities for growth and development. And this is a company I can see myself working with for many years to come. Or you can, again, just say something like, I really want to learn more about my field. I really want to learn more about this company here in Canada and what the work culture is like. So you can just show that, yes, you may be overqualified, but you still want to stay in this position and you will be in this position long term. Now, what if an interviewer asks you about a gap in your work history? Employers typically don't like to see gaps in your resume. They wonder why you haven't been working during these gaps. They may also think that you are not a reliable worker. Although it is not unusual to have some gaps in your resumes, and honestly, for a variety of reasons. You need to be prepared to handle questions about them. Should an interviewer ask? If you have an employment gap, depending on the situation, you may even wish to raise the issue yourself and address the situation before the employer gets a chance to ask. Here's a sample answer. Since coming to Canada 3 years ago, I've been involved in a variety of activities in my community. I'm volunteering as a treasurer with the Family Resource Center. I attended Advanced English as a second language course and finished a number of courses related to the financial field, such as taxation, simply accounting, etc. Currently, I am in the process of becoming a certified general accountant. So that's one very detailed answer. You can also say if it was a health issue, you could say something like, I've been dealing with a health issue that has now been resolved and I am eager to get back to the workforce. Or maybe you're taking care of family. So you could say something like, I've been taking care of family. In the meantime, I've been volunteering with X organization or taking X courses. And the family situation has now been resolved and I am eager to get back into the workforce. So anything like that will work for that kind of question. Types of interview questions. There are 4 main types of questions. One is general, where interviewers ask general questions to assess how well you know yourself and your skills, how well you communicate your skills, and how well you market yourself. There are many kinds of questions in this general category. For example, tell me a bit about yourself, tell me why you'd be a good fit for this job, etc. Technical questions are where the interviews assess your technical knowledge, skill level, and critical thinking skills. So this is where any of those hard skills from your career and in the field that you're looking to get into will be asked and tested for. So behavioral questions are asked because the behavioral answers can give specific examples of past behavior, which is a predictor of future behavior. Behavioral answers provide a little bit more detail and knowledge. So a behavioral question is where they'll ask something like, can you tell me about a time where you solved a problem? Or tell me about a time where you disagreed with your manager. How did you handle that? So anything like that can be asked for. Situational questions are similar. However, they ask you to respond to a hypothetical situation. So for example, they might say, you come into work one day, you have a client who comes in and is angry that something didn't get done. How would you handle that client? So they put you in that imaginary situation and want to know what you would do. You can't always answer with as much detail as you would in a behavioral question, but you can still give a good general guideline. And remember, if you ever get asked a behavioral question and you have not been in that situation before, turn that into a situational question. For example, I have not been in that position before. However, if I were to be, this is what I would do. STAR method is a good way to answer a behavior question, as well as sometimes a situational question. This will help you stay focused and organized and ensure all relevance details are included. So situation, set up the context. Make sure the 5 W's, who, what, where, when, why, are understood by the interviewer. Be careful of tenses. Use past verb forms. Use clear time words and phrases. At the end of last year, during my first few months at company, etc. Task, recount your role. This is a chance to show how you participated in this situation. Were you part of a committee or team? Were you assigned by a manager? Did you take over the problem on your own? Did you report to anyone? You can use both active and passive voices. My manager assigned me as the team leader, or I was assigned as team leader. Action. Give details about what you did. Talk about your analysis, any analysis or problem solving you had to do. Describe the process in detail. Use words to signal the progression like first, second, initially, and then. Follow a chronological time frame from first step to last step. Talk about any challenges you face and what did you do to deal with them. Result, reveal the outcome. What made you proud? Why do you consider this an accomplishment? Use any details that you can. Use any details that you can, including any kinds of statistics, numbers, etc. Employers do tend to really like those. As well as any comments from coworkers, supervisors, or clients, etc. Note, if you don't understand a question, it is okay to ask for clarification. However, you may need to do so. At the end of an interview, you will almost always be asked if you have any questions. It's great to answer with yes. Not only can you show your passion and interest, but you can also find out helpful information that will help you make your own decisions. For example, you can ask questions like, can you share more about the day-to-day responsibilities of this position? What are the expectations of an employee in this role within the first 3 months? What characteristics would help a candidate thrive in this role? Currently, what is the largest obstacle facing your department? Do you offer continuing education and/or professional development? What's the company's organization and management style like? What are the company goals for the upcoming year? What do you enjoy most about your job? And of course, the ever important, what is the next step in the interview process, which will give you more of a timeline and idea of how the interview process will proceed. So these are just some examples. You can also have other questions that you'd like. If anything that kind of matches what you're looking for is okay to ask. You want to have a little bit more of a conversation as well with employers, as that will leave a good impression. Body language and tone are very important aspects to an interview. You should smile, make eye contact, try not to fidget, and stand up straight. Have a firm but not too strong handshake. Try to not have too much with you. You don't want to be scrambling after everything, and it can make you look disorganized. Speak confidently, don't mumble, be enthusiastic, don't speak in a monotone. If you're feeling a little bit anxious or nervous and you need to calm down, there is a link here that brings you to some grounding techniques that can help ease that anxiety. And remember, no gums or strong scents, including body odor. How to prepare for an interview. So you can arrange how you'll get to the interview and make sure you give yourself a little bit of a buffer time in case you're running late. But make sure not to arrive any earlier than 15 minutes. Review the job description. Research the company and job and company more thoroughly. Check the company's social media. Find out more about the interviewers if you have that information. Predict possible interview questions from the job description. For example, you can think about potential technical questions that they may ask about. Prepare answers to those possible questions. Practice your skills for a practical test if applicable. Prepare questions for the interviewer about the job or company. Contact and prepare your references. And if you're able to do so, bring a copy of those references and select professional clothes to wear. Now, so in this time, we're having a lot of virtual interviews, and they can be kind of tricky. So how will you do one? Make sure to find a quiet place with a neutral background. Even if you have to clear out a closet or maybe put up a blanket behind you in case the walls aren't too great. Make sure you have all your files ready in case they're asked for. This can include references, resumes, cover letters, etc. As well, have your email open. This way you can respond to requests as soon as possible. Make sure to dress the exact same as you would for a professional in-person interview. And make sure to click on the link, whatever link that they provide that the interview will be, a couple minutes early just in case it asks you to log in. You can also find more information if you go to our website, arriveprepared.ca. We do have a news section where we have different kinds of blogs and articles, and we do have one on virtual interviews if you're interested. Now, you may still get called in for an in-person interview during this COVID-19 climate. If asked, you can always ask for a virtual phone interview as you feel safer that way. However, if they do prefer you to go in and you do feel all right to do so, this may help. So you're going to want to wear a professional outfit, of course, but also include a mask. This mask should be in a natural color or solid color or a very neutral pattern. You're going to want to bring a small bottle of hand sanitizer with you in case they don't have some for you. It may be helpful to bring a second mask as well, just in case. Now, if you do go into that interview and the employers are not taking safety seriously, you're going to want to keep that in mind. If they're not having masks on, it is okay to politely say, can you please put a mask on while we're here? Make sure to sit a little bit more away, try and have that physical distancing if possible. And pay attention, because if it is an employer that's not taking safety seriously, this is good information for you to know, because is that a place that would really be a good working environment for you? References. Even if you're not asked for references before an interview, it may be helpful to bring a list of those references with you just in case they ask for them. Make sure to ask yourself, will this person be able to provide a good reference? And always ask permission to use people as reference. And if you are actively job searching, let them know. And that way, if you ever get invited to an interview, just let them know that they may get a call from this company for this position. If you do give a reference out to an employer, send a copy of the job description to the reference. This will help them prepare and guide them on what to say. How to follow up. After an interview, you can follow up with the interviewers in a thank you note. You can send a brief email to your interviewers after the interview, thanking them, reiterating your enthusiasm for the job, and mentioning something you perhaps liked about the interview, or a statement reaffirming your skills. After your interview, you can also follow up if you haven't heard back. You should wait at least 2 weeks. If they give you a timeline of when you would hear back, then give an extra few days after this timeline. It's very easy for delays to pop up during this kind of job search process. And then you can send a quick email, something like, hello, I hope you're doing well. I'm just checking in on the progress of my application or progress of the interview process. Only do this if you've had an interview with them, and only do this once. Too often is not good. Sometimes some employers will not answer you, which is a disappointment, but oftentimes they can be very busy. So that it really is just a reality of the job search process. Top interview mistakes. Not researching the position, company, or industry. Arriving late, having a messy appearance, giving a poor handshake, too weak to hard or sweaty, leaving your cell phone on during the interview. This includes virtual interviews as well. Either turn the cell phone sound off or don't have it in with you while you're doing the interview. Not listening carefully to the interview's questions, answering questions with just a yes or no without adding any details, giving answers that are organized and rambling, not making a connection between the employer's needs and your qualifications, not showing your enthusiasm for the job. Note, if you're not comfortable shaking hands, especially with right now what's going on, you can always try putting a hand over your heart and nodding. Or honestly, you can also just say, especially with the reality of what's happening right now, I'd prefer not to shake hands. As long as you say it in a respectful tone, that's perfectly okay to do. Now, please ask me any questions you may have. You can do so in the chat box below. Does anyone have any questions? So here's a good question. For a face-to-face interview, we have to show up 10 to 15 minutes before. What about the online interview? So you're not going to want to show up too early because people are usually still setting up all the tech stuff, and they may want to chat with them a little bit beforehand. Because when you're going to an in-person interview, there's usually a waiting room for you, which typically isn't there for a lot of the online interviews. So I would click on the link about maybe 5 minutes maximum before the interview is due. What is the easiest, a live or pre-recorded video interview? So this can kind of vary. A live interview is nice because you can really talk and have more of a conversation with an interviewer. You'll be able to ask questions. But a pre-recorded video, that can depend because sometimes you'll get multiple tries to do your video interview, which can be nice. So it really just depends on what you feel and what you prefer. Most of the time, you're not going to get an option for this, so you'll find out. I have done a pre-recorded video interview before, and it was used more as a screening tool. So it's going to be typically not quite as long. It's going to be more general questions. And then once you get past that and into the in-person interview is when you'll really see that kind of information. So someone here was a mobility question. So mobility questions, so an employer typically should not be asking about your disability unless you yourself bring it up. And I would say if you do have any if you need any accommodations, that's perfectly fine here. It is a law that employer must provide accommodations as long as it is not an undue hardship for a business, which is usually bit of a high level, but I would say you don't need to bring up any accommodations until after that you have the job. And an employer should not really be, most of the time, shouldn't be asking about that unless it's a very physical job. Someone was late, do not worry. This session has been recorded and you will see it on YouTube. One of my coworkers posted the link, so that's perfect. And you will be getting a copy of the presentation as well. So another question, what to say if my interviewers ask if I have any questions for them. So we did go over in that presentation a little bit. There was a list of questions there. You really do want to have at least a couple of questions. You want to show that you've been thinking about this job. You want to show that this is something you're really interested in. And you want to get some information, like it really shows your critical thinking skills. A simple question can even just be, what does a typical day in this position look like? And honestly, I encourage everyone to use the question, what are the next steps in the interview process? Because it's just very helpful in easing your own anxiety. It's helpful in giving you information about what are the next steps. Do you need to, will there be a second interview? Is this just the final interview and then they'll be using your references? When will you hear back from them? And they'll give you that kind of information. How common are face-to-face interviews at the moment? That's a really good question. I honestly can't say. I think that's going to depend on the job and the field. The jobs that are more likely to be able to be done from home are more likely to be virtual. But even with some fields that are still working in person right now, at least for the first interview where they're still kind of maybe screening through people, I think that would be done virtual more likely, just so people don't have too many newcomers coming in and out of the building. So I would say it's probably more common to be doing virtual interviews right now, although that can be field dependent. Can you give a few sample questions and answers? Okay, so I think that's about what to say if an interviewer asks if I have any questions. Sorry about that. I have some dogs here at home. They're just barking. So I did give some sample questions in the presentation. For example, what does a typical day in this position look like? What is your thing you like most about this job? What are your company goals? What are the goals of this position? Or maybe what do you think someone in this position what qualities does someone in this position most need to succeed? Anything like that. Your goal here is to get a little bit more information about what the work culture is like and what the expectations are like. And you want to let the employer know that you're using your critical thinking skills, that you are interested in this position, and you're enthusiastic. I have a question here about, can we negotiate the salary? You can negotiate the salary, but that's going to be the last step. So typically when they have a job offer for you is when you'll get more information about that kind of salary. However, do please be aware that some positions will have a salary in their job description. They might have a salary range, and it might be a little bit more limited to that range. When you do negotiate your salary, do your research. You need to have your reasons for why you're choosing that salary and why it's a fair salary. And you're going to need to show that that's what you need. So do your research, see what the market rate for salary is, see what kind of experience that salary would go for. And there's several websites you can look at. Canada Job Bank website has a great salary range there. If you know anyone in the field, you can do some informational interviews and ask them what kind of most common salary rates are. You can even look through different job descriptions and see if they mention salary and how much that salary is for how many years of experience they're looking for. Geographic mobility. So depending on where you are and what the job is, it may be a job that you need to move for. Typically, employers do prefer candidates who are already local to that area, so that might be a little bit tricky. But if you show that you really are interested in this position and you're willing to move, then that would be perfectly all right. Do be aware, however, that not all companies will give you a moving salary. So if a company is able to do that, they will, but if not, you are going to need to cover that for yourself. So here's a good question. How to prepare yourself when you're anxious or stressed because you're not used to job interviews. What interviewers usually about this kind of candidates? So if everyone is going to be at least a little bit nervous in interviews, that's perfectly all right. And most employers are going to expect that. One of the links we had was in the presentation was showing some grounding techniques. And that's just a way to kind of take your mind off of the interview and put yourself more into the moment so you can calm down. Preparation is honestly very helpful. The more you do an interview, the more relaxed you're going to be with it. So with experience, you're going to be a lot better with it. But also make sure to prepare. Research the company, research the position. If there's any common questions, for example, a common question is what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? So, and that is the weakness question is one that can cause a lot of anxiety. Research that question, research what kind of answers are out there. Go over any of your technical hard skills, prepare your answers for those difficult questions about, if there are any gaps in employment. The more prepared you are, the better you will feel. But again, it's okay to show a little bit of nervousness and anxiousness. Almost no one likes interviews. Employers know that. A little bit is fine. And if you ever need to think about an answer, which you may need to do, it's totally fine to just say that's a great question. I just need a minute to think about it. How long should a typical regular answer be? So I would say typically it's about between 1 and 2 minutes. It doesn't need to be too long unless it's a question that's asking a lot of detail. How can we convince the employer to hire us when we don't have any Canadian experience? This is a great question. You want to show how that Canadian experience is how your own experience is relevant to that Canadian position. For example, if it's a finance role, talk about your financial knowledge, talk about your experience, show how it's relevant. It will also be helpful, for example, there are sometimes some bridging courses depending on the field that will kind of help you make that more of a leap to that Canadian workforce. So you can always look up the provincial bridging courses, for example, Ontario bridging courses or Alberta bridging courses, and a lot of different fields will pop up. If you're in a regulated profession, show that you are starting that licensing process, that you've already made some progress and that it is coming soon. If you're able to, I really do encourage people to volunteer. I encourage you to network and talk to other people and see if there's any way you can help. Should I bring my letters of recommendations to the interview? You can bring letters of recommendation with you if you'd like, just in case they do ask for that. I would say you want letters of recommendations as well as at least 1 or 2 references that people can call, because employers would prefer to be able to ask their own questions to people. But yes, bring letters of recommendation and bring references with you, but only give it to the employer if it's asked for. Are IQ tests or other personality or psychological tests used by recruiters? I believe they are used by some recruiters. Typically, that would be at the beginning of the process. So maybe they're screening for people they want to interview, or they did a short interview and they're going to screen some of the ones after that. It is possible. This is going to be really field dependent. Some people are going to use it, some people aren't. So that's kind of where you want to do your research and look into it and see what's common for your own field. I can't say how common they are. It sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't. What if my references are not in Canada? Can I list people from another country? Yes, you absolutely can. I would say the only barrier is if they don't speak English, or so if so, you can say, I can give you these references. However, they don't speak English, and you can kind of try and see if you can make a accommodate each other. But if it's totally fine to bring them in references in from another country, let them know what the time zone is, and then you can kind of figure that out to the best of your ability yourself. Okay, here's a really good question. Should we be honest and straightforward by saying that we can do extra hours? That, for example, if one of our children has problems at school the first day, we may arrive late or so, etc. So these are questions you're going to want to talk with your manager about after you have received the job. You don't need to talk about it beforehand. Employers typically, it's not always good information for the employer right now, because then they might make a decision based on information that they really don't have the standing to use, because employers are not allowed to discriminate against people for family reasons. Once you have the job, you're going to talk to your manager to see if accommodations can be made. Some employers are going to be more flexible than others, and it's also just going to depend on the job. For example, if you're in a receptionist role, it's not going to be easy to be late because they need someone on the phones as soon as the organization opens. So that's a conversation you're going to have with your manager once you start. And then do realize that sometimes it's going to be able to, sometimes they're going to have flexibility, sometimes they're not going to have that flexibility. It's going to depend on the company, the manager, and the needs of the role that you're doing. Of course, if overtime is a regular part of that role, that would be a question that you can talk about in the interview, and the employer may be honest and just say this is a role that requires a lot of overtime, or maybe it says that you need flexible hours or overtime in the job description, and you can certainly ask about that in the job interview. But if you're going to need accommodations or changing start times or anything like that, that would be a conversation to have afterwards. Any other questions? I'll just give it an extra minute. Once again, this is being recorded. You will be able to have the recording of this video. It's on YouTube. Andrea should put the link in the chat box, and you will have a copy of this presentation as well. I do encourage you, if you're already not signed up, please check out our website, arriveprepared.ca. We are a pre-arrival program, and we're for anyone who is coming to Canada. You can check out the eligibility requirements on our website. And it's a really great program. If you have any questions, if you need anything, we have all kinds of people who are experts in their own field, and we can really do help prepare your arrival here in Canada. Okay, an excellent question. How should I prepare for a question about my weakness? So you want to be honest about a weakness. However, you don't want to end on a negative. So it's all right to say something like, I've had trouble speaking out in meetings before. However, I've talked to my manager. I took some training and planned out how to deal with that issue. And I've started speaking up at least a couple times per meeting. So you kind of want to show a weakness and then talk about what you have done to help with that weakness. Another way you can do that is also give a weakness, but show how it's a strength as well. So you can say something for a customer service position. You can say, I can be pretty quiet and not too talkative, but you can also just turn that into a strength by saying, but I am a great listener and always ensure my customers get what they want. So something like that. Please do, you don't need to be very honest. You kind of want to tailor that weakness to the position that you're applying for, and don't talk about stuff like being emotional or angry or anything like that. Kind of keep it more into the professional skills that might be a weakness. Are there any recommendations regarding dress code during interviews? So I did talk about that during the presentation. You're going to want to see what kind of norms are in the field and dress one step above that. So if it's a business casual, dress somewhere between business casual and business formal. I would say to always be safe, just make sure you have a button-down shirt or blouse and a blazer and trousers or skirt and some very nice professional shoes. That way, it's better to be overdressed than underdressed, I would say. And yes, great recommendation. Reminder here, we do have next week another SOPA webinar on the importance of soft skills. So if you don't have a lot of experience, because I know a lot of countries don't have pay attention to soft skills the way we do here in Canada. So if you're unsure about that or have any questions about that, it's the perfect webinar for you. And that will be next week on Wednesday, October 7th at 10. And you can check that out on Eventbrite as well. Any other questions? I'll give another minute if anyone has any other questions. Andrea just put the link to the YouTube video again as being live on YouTube right now, and it'll still be on there after this presentation, so everyone will be able to see the recording and do it on their own pace, and maybe write down some notes if they would like to do that as well. Okay, just another. Okay, great question. Is it okay to ask for feedback if I didn't receive any follow-up calls after the interview? So you can ask for feedback. I would stick to this question in an email, maybe not a phone call, because that would kind of put someone on the spot. It is okay to email for feedback. You can say something like, I just want to follow up on the interview and ask if there was any feedback that you have for me. I would really appreciate it. Thank you. But do keep in mind, you may not always get an answer. That's for a variety of reasons. Maybe the employer is being very busy right now, or maybe they don't always feel comfortable answering that kind of question from a potential candidate, but it's a totally fair thing to ask for. Okay, we'll give it another 30 seconds. Again, check out our other webinars. You can check out, we should have a couple that are on the YouTube link that Andrea has given. You can also check out arriveprepared.ca. We have a YouTube channel there as well. And we do have a lot of different blogs and articles that have some very helpful hints. We have an article on informational interviews. We have virtual on networking, on virtual interviews, etc. And it's just arriveprepared.ca. And those articles are in the news section, and that's for anyone, client or not. And if you're interested in being a client, you can find all the information there. There's a lot of, on interviews, you can even do mock interviews with your facilitator or your employment counselor. We have our job search strategies course, which goes over every part of the job search process, from labor market research to resumes, to cover letters, to networking, to interviews, and it goes into a lot of great detail there. Okay, I think we're gonna end it there for today. So thank you all for coming. And please let us know if you need anything. Please check out our other webinars. And if you have any questions, let us know. Thank you so much for coming, guys. Bye.